And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, it's our friend Andy Borowitz is back, writer, comedian, New York Times bestselling author, co-creator of the TV show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and he has the Borowitz Report, which he created alone. It's wildly popular. BorowitzReport.com. Andy, nice to see you, my friend. How's Davos? Are you doing okay there?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Dean, good to see you. It's our first show of 2026. So
It is,
excited.
and it feels exactly like a month ago, except worse. I've aged. Trump is killing me. So, a lot to talk. Let's talk about some of the Greenland stuff and then something with Donald Trump's hands, which I'm not sure if you have any insight, but we're not doctors, but neither is RFK Jr. So, we could say whatever we want on a medical
We
point of
can.
view and diagnose what's wrong with him. So, Greenland, Trump for 2 weeks obsessed America. He brought us to the brink of a war with our NATO allies, literally, where they're putting troops on the ground saying, we absolutely have to have this land. No doubt about it. Nothing can change my mind. Yesterday, he goes, well, we have a concept of a plan, and now there's really no plan, and he backs off. What was going on here? What's your take?
Well, first of all, Dean, let me just say this, and I can break this news on the show today.
Oh,
The Epstein files are way worse than any of us imagined. And I
hmm.
have the receipts. I can prove it right now.
Okay.
Because think of all the things that Donald Trump is doing to get us to stop talking about the Epstein files. He kidnaps a head of state from Venezuela. Do you remember that? I don't know if you remember that he did that. That was like
I
a
do.
few weeks ago, a guy named Maduro, I believe.
Hmm.
So he's
Joey
he's
Maduro? Was that Bobby Maduro? I think I'm from Jersey. I think I know. Bobby
you
Maduro from
know,
down
he
the
has a
block.
garage. He has a
Right. Let's
garage,
get
right?
right. Right.
So he does that. Then he says that he wants to invade Greenland or acquire it, but he's willing to invade it. He's willing to put tariffs on our NATO allies. And like people are trying to figure out, like, does Article 5 even apply if one of us attacks another one of us? You need
Hmm.
like a whole new legal definition to explain that. So he does all of that. And today I was watching, I don't know if you caught any of the Jack Smith testimony in
Yes.
Congress,
Sure.
but one of the Democrats actually made a really good point, which is he said the Epstein files are so bad, the Republicans would rather talk about January 6th than the Epstein
Ted
files.
Lieu. Ted Lieu said that.
Yeah,
Congressman
great. I
Ted Lieu. I
love Ted
like Ted
Lieu.
Lieu.
I was on my
Right.
treadmill, so I didn't see who it was, but it was really a brilliant observation. I mean, how bad could the Epstein files possibly be that you would like to discuss the insurrection that your guy instigated against the United States government? So all I can say is the fact that we've seen like 1% of the Epstein files in
Hmm.
context of everything I just said makes perfect sense because the other 99% must be absolutely horrifying.
That's and to your very point, I wrote an article for Substack today about now that this BS is done, let's get back to issues that really touch people and affect their lives. One is Epstein, because the survivors are clamoring for it. They said it's going to help
Right.
them with healing and closure. This is important for them. Second is Trump's corruption. It's off the charts. I mean, New York Times had a great article earlier this week detailing and documenting $1.4 billion in grift this criminal has taken while in the White House, from Qatar to his BS lawsuits. The economy is faltering, and polling shows it, and the media is just ignoring what people are really going through right now. And so I think it's so, and there's so many other issues as well. But Ted Lieu made a great point. So, I mean, what do you think deep down? Do you believe honestly that Trump did Greenland just to dismiss from and distract from Epstein, or do you think it's varied? There's like that's one part, and the other part is like Mussolini or Hitler and other fascist leaders. You want to expand the land and its scope of power?
Well, look, I mean, I do think that he sort of wishes that the 20th century never happened. He prefers the 19th century. I mean, he really prefers the 17th century, back when we had, slavery and we could just land. And it was very interesting when he was saying, like, he was talking about Greenland and Denmark, and he said, you guys you claimed Greenland because you had a boat that arrived there 200 years ago. And I was saying, by that logic, we really should give the country back to the Native Americans because all we did was we had a boat that came. So he really doesn't like the whole notion of the 20th century. He wants to go back to kind of the Monroe Doctrine, Manifest Destiny. I think that the thrill of the TV show that he pulled off in Venezuela just it's so invigorated him, it so excited him and filled him with this false sense of virility that he just said, "No, I want another hit like that." So he wants to
Right.
start, rattling his saber everywhere. But I do think one thing we have to keep in mind, and I will give him credit for this. I don't know if it's credit is the word, but I will at least try to understand him or show some
Hmm.
empathy, which is that if you are running a country into the ground and you don't really have any solutions to domestic problems because domestic problems are hard. Fixing an economy is really hard for
Hmm.
a head of
Sure.
state. The foreign stuff is always more appealing. I mean, if you look at like the UK, like Boris Johnson was a disaster as a prime minister, but he was good at like going to Ukraine and saying, we stand with Ukraine. And the same is true with Keir Starmer, who's, just one of the most unpopular prime
Oh my
ministers
God.
in
I don't
British
like him at
history
all.
and Keir Starmer cannot put a foot right when it comes to domestic policy. They have this thing in Britain, we call it flip-flopping here, but in Britain they call it U-turns when they take a
Hmm.
U-turn and they have a policy and then they have to climb down.
Right.
We have a little bit of that, as you observed. But Keir Starmer just keeps on doing these U-turns because basically, if there's a policy that people like one of the policies in Britain is digital IDs. People like the idea of digital IDs because it'll maybe cut down on illegal immigrants and make it harder for illegal immigrants to get jobs. By the way, that's their term. I don't use the word illegal. Undocumented is the term I use.
Sure.
Um, but this was a popular policy until Keir Starmer said he was in favor of it. And that
That's how
and that's
bad he is.
and that's how bad he is. So, Keir Starmer, no wonder he likes, being a Trump whisperer, as they call it, and like,
Right.
posing up to Trump and doing, coming up with a coalition of the willing for Ukraine, because that stuff, believe it or not, is easier than the domestic stuff.
Sure.
And
Can
so
we go back
Trump,
to one thing? One quick
yeah.
thing. So is Keir Starmer, did you ever see the movie The Cooler with William H. Macy? With and Alec Baldwin. Keir Starmer's the cooler. Like if
He is the
someone's winning big
cooler.
at a table, Alec Baldwin said William H. Macy to stand there, and he was saying that, and the guy was playing it like cards or rolling dice would start losing. So that's we need a new version. Maybe you could do a sequel. I mean, you are
You,
entertainment
I mean,
guru.
you are the first person to, I think, bring a very obscure movie reference
I like that movie. I see it on
into
cable. It's well done. I think it's very Alec Baldwin, Paul Sorvino as the over the hill singer, and then Joey Fatone shows up. I mean, there's a lot going on, well, folks. It is underrated, and I've based my life on the movie The Cooler. Just so you know, I'm
I
the ball.
sense that our whole format of this segment is changing now. We're doing underappreciated films that you and I like.
They're like, I'll
Um,
be next. We're going to go to Goodfellas, which was appreciated, but I
you
think it's
know what was
important to
really
bring.
good? If we're talking about gangster movies, is The Limey is really good. Have you ever seen that?
I'm not sure.
Steven
No,
Soderbergh, Terrence
great
Stamp,
director. Oh, I
Terrence
may have
Stamp.
seen it. It sounds familiar. But
Check
all
it
right,
out.
let's get
Anyway,
back to the cooler. But I'm with Andy Borowitz, the heater. Andy Borowitz brings the heat, folks, wherever he
I
goes.
bring the
If you're
heat
losing
always.
and Andy shows up at the table, you're going to start winning. That's how magnanimous and his powers
Oh,
extend beyond. See, it's a good guy. So, all right, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you, but the cooler thing was stuck in my brain. Like,
so
if Andy
Greenland. We were
talks
talking about
anymore, I'll forget
Greenland.
it.
We were talking.
Greenland, the
Yeah,
cooler
I mean,
land.
I think
Iceland?
there are a
Or are we
number
talking
of things.
Iceland or Greenland? Or are we talking both?
I mean,
Iceland
well,
and
that's the other
Greenland?
thing. Like he kept on, as many people, except in the mainstream media, have pointed out, he did keep on confusing Greenland and Iceland, and it is a little bit infuriating because this is the kind of thing that the media would have made a full meal of had it been Joe Biden doing it. Jake Tapper, I'm still waiting for Jake Tapper's book on Trump.
He would have written an
Got
encyclopedia on that.
absolutely. But I mean, I think there are a number of things going on. One is I genuinely think Trump thinks anything can be bought because
Mhm.
he's bought so many people. I mean, he little Marco and the whole crew that he's got around him. He's the polite word is always transactional, but it's basically just he has this very debased view of humanity. He just thinks anybody can be bought, everybody has their price. And so why not Denmark? Why doesn't Greenland just have their price? He also likes being this fake mob boss. I mean, I am so sick of everybody in this administration saying we can do it the easy way or the hard way. Just stop saying that shit. That is the most boring, unimaginative mob boss talk. Come up with something new. Like get the box set of, The Sopranos and come up with some more clever mob sayings than that. But
I
that's the worst. So there is that element, but then the other element is just he does this stuff is just quite frankly easier than
Mhm.
fixing affordability or fixing healthcare. I mean, remember in the first term he said, "Who knew that healthcare was so complicated?" It was like, dude, pretty much everybody except you knew that.
it's I like that you're upset with you're tired of that term. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. The term that I can't stand, and it's in the politics setting, well, they can chew and was it walk and chew gum at the same time? I'm like, who can't walk and chew gum at the same time? If you have a friend who's like, hang on, I got to sit down. I want to chew some gum. There's something really wrong with your friend. So like, I don't know. My point is, I hate when corporate media says, well, Democrats now are going to have to walk and chew gum. I hope they could. I mean, who can't do that? You've brought the baseline down. And it's not like a comedy, but I'm telling you honestly, like that, the hard way, the easy way. Trump keeps saying that, yeah, and it's now become cliche. Same thing with corporate media. But corporate media, people have said like Trump is not Hitler. Clearly, at no time did Hitler say, I want to invade Czechoslovakia and then confuse it with Lithuania in his speech. Like, when Hitler wanted a country, he's kept on note. Trump, and do you like the defense of it? Oh, Carolyn Levitt, this is not a joke. The press secretary said to a reporter, no, you must be confused. He didn't confuse anything. This is a mental issue going on. A lot of ice in Greenland, and his mind switched to two. When he was reading off the teleprompter, he would say Greenland. Second later, on his own, at least 4 times, he said Iceland. His brain doesn't work well, Andy. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. There's other physical things too. I mean, we've talked about it before, corporate media not delving in to really asking questions, and we can get to something more objective. The medical issue. People probably saw a picture of Davos. Donald Trump has a huge, ugly looking bruise on his left hand, very, very ugly. But in the past, it was on his right hand. And they defended it by saying he's shaking hands and that's how he got a bruise. And everybody who knew anything about blood thinners, stuff, that's not what's happening on it, some IV.
Right.
Now it's on the left hand. He doesn't shake hands with either hand. He's not shaking with the left hand. The bruise on the left looks very alarming. And why doesn't the corporate media clamor for you are lying about the president's health? That's what, for all jokes aside, that's what they're doing. They are lying about the president's health. And there's no sense like we need answers. What's wrong with the president? Why is he getting an IV into right hand and now the left hand? Was there a collapse of the vessels in the right hand? So they have to go to left. Tell us what's going on.
Well, as long as we're doing overused movie cliches, Dean, if he's getting a drip, I won't have whatever he's having. I just want you to say to know that because I mean, if this is Trump on a drip, like this is
Mhm.
him at his best, like he's using performance enhancing drugs. I first of all don't want to know what his baseline was before they were administered. But I also really question what he's being given because his performance, it wasn't just that he messed up Greenland and Iceland. He sounded winded. His voice was weak. I mean, I keep coming back to this. One thing that the Soviet Union was really good at was that when they had an ailing leader, and they had a bunch of them, a whole string of them,
Mhm.
from Brezhnev to Andropov and Chernenko, and these guys were like literally keeling over every few months. They would keep these guys out of view.
Right.
And the problem with Trump is that he's a malignant narcissist. So he feels like he ceases to exist if he's out of view. So he overrules them and he goes out there on camera and actually talks much longer than is advisable. I mean, if you have real cognitive problems, you can maybe cover it if you just say a few words. I mean, Ronald Reagan, as you know, was
Mhm.
suffering from Alzheimer's, but they really limited how much you saw of him. And there's a great clip of him and Nancy. You've probably seen this because it's pretty famous, but they're on the White House lawn and some people are shouting a question at President Reagan, and he absolutely draws a blank. And Nancy sort of whispers to him, "We're doing everything we can." And then he says, "We're doing everything we can." It's like,
Oh,
wow. It's like you can't improvise. We're doing everything we can. That's pretty bad. But that's how covered up he was. They really handled him like a Ming vase and made sure that he wasn't really exposed to too many hazards in terms of questions. But Trump Trump refuses to do that because his ego is so fragile that if he's not on TV all the time, he's just sort of facing the abyss within him that he doesn't exist. So, that was an incredibly extended performance in Davos.
Hmm.
And I want to say this, I'm certainly not as old as Donald Trump, and neither is my wife, but the two of us, we both are writers, so we both work at home, and we sometimes will discuss things like whether or not we're cognitive slipping in some ways. Like for example, if one of us leaves like our car keys in the fridge or something like that,
Hmm.
that's kind of a cause for alarm. But I will say this, after watching Trump at Davos, if you're concerned about your cognitive slippage, just go to YouTube and watch that, and you will just be full of confidence and self-esteem in how sharp you are. I want that to be my ringtone now, maybe just the Iceland bit, because it does make you feel like, oh, well, God, I'm not as messed up as he is. Feels good.
I think I also think it's interesting, Andy. You reveal that what you and your wife talk about. I've met your wife very little. It's like, honey, did we talk about the cognitive slippage part? I think we did. Yeah, I think we did too. Sure, let's move on. Like that's the best part. This is so Trump needs, and again today, obviously is movie themes, some kind of Cyrano de Bergerac type of thing, where someone
Mm,
will whisper to him, or like the updated version Roxanne with Steve Martin, where someone whispers to him, and then Trump goes out there and says it, but he'll mangle it. He was talking about, Gavin Newsom is at Davos trying to be what I've begged Democrats to be like an opposition party leader. Because in the UK, that's what they
hmm.
have. They have a shadow cabinet for every
Right.
position. It's very important. I think that's such a great thing, and Democrats need it. But Davos, he's at Davos, and they asked him, "Are you concerned he was Greenland, Iceland?" And he looked at me. He's like, "You," sort of like he didn't want to say, I think, what he really felt, but it was like, "You grade him on a curve all the time. Like this is part of what you do." And
Hmm.
then why are you not the windmills? He's like, he was going, he's like, windmills. Why are you talking about that? He's like, windmills and the 2020 election, and brings up Ilhan Omar, who's on my show tomorrow. I mean, like, well, you're in Davos. You're talking about, it's his brain is just regressing the things that he can still grasp. And that's why it's the same speech over and over. I think it's getting harder for him to make new memories. My mom had Alzheimer's. I lived through that. It's a horrible thing. You watch his speeches now, you feel like, should I call somebody? I mean, this shouldn't be happening, right? Is there a number for this? An 800 number, like, to report this?
Well, the other thing, yeah, I mean, we've gone in a few short years, we've gone from like Obamacare to memory care. Now we're talking about like, should
I
Trump
like
be in
that.
a locked ward? Um, there's some other things that he said that were, I mean, the Iceland Greenland thing got our attention naturally because it's just so funny. But there's some other things he said that were a bit odd. And here's what's tricky about Trump, which is that it's very hard to separate what is dementia and what is just his ignorance because,
Mhm.
I not to promote my book, but I will pitch it briefly, which is I wrote a book 3 years ago called Profiles in Ignorance, and it dealt with the ignorance or feigned ignorance of a lot of our politicians. And in Trump's case, it's not feigned, it's very much honest. He comes by it honestly. But there were so many things about American history and world history that he didn't know, that he just didn't
Right.
understand. And it really, I'm going back like 20 years. So it's not like, when he was a younger man, he just didn't know things because he's very ignorant. He had people take tests for him in school. So even though he went to good institutions of higher learning, he is relatively unmolested by education or knowledge. But he said a few things in that he always gets in trouble when he ventures into the area of history.
Hmm.
And he said he liked to talk about World War II. One that's really great was we said, we won World War II and we won it big. We won it big. And it's like he's acting like he had something to do with World War II. And actually, the only war that he had any opportunity to participate in was Vietnam. And as we know, he got a podiatrist note to get out of serving in
Hmm.
Vietnam. But he was sort of claiming credit for World War II. And then he said to this audience in Switzerland, he said, if it hadn't been for us, you'd all be talking German right now. And of course, in Switzerland, they do speak German. That is the main language. So they're like looking at each other and saying, "What? I mean, we do talk we do talk German. Willkommen." Um, so that was one thing, and there was another moment where he was talking about speaking to the head of state of Switzerland, how much he didn't like her. Do you remember that bit?
Right. Called to a woman.
He
The
called her
woman
the
from
woman
my,
because he doesn't know her name. He
I'm
also
not kidding.
did
The
that, I
transcript,
think.
I read it. It's like the
He
woman.
does
I'm
that a
like, the
lot with
woman.
people. Like I think there was a moment, I think earlier this year where he was, or last year, where he had some meeting with Nancy Mace, I think, and he didn't know what her name was.
Hakeem Jeffries. Well, Hakeem Jeffries. I met
He-
this very nice guy from New York. You know, that's what he said. I'm not kidding, folks. Like that should have been a red flag to everyone. You're from New York. You must. Hakeem Jeffries has been here for decades. You were a New York business guy. He couldn't remember Hakeem Jeffries. He remember Chuck
right,
Schumer
and he
and this
doesn't.
very
Yeah,
nice guy from New York. That's what he
yeah.
said.
Well, he was talking about he didn't like apparently the woman from Switzerland,
Yep, didn't
and
like her.
he was saying, you're prime minister or president or whatever she is. So I guess her official title is she's president of the Swiss Federation. I think that's
Hmm,
her actual title, which I just
sounds
learned
good.
yesterday because I
Hmm.
was just curious because now granted, I am a comedian, so I'm not really supposed to know what these people's title are, nor their names. But
Right.
actually, it's kind of an important thing for him to know. And he was just at sea. So it's like, you're right. There are a very limited number of topics that he can talk about and sound even semi not idiotic. And that number of topics is, I feel like, shrinking over time.
It's also, he said, we should have never given Greenland back after World War II. Like we didn't invade Greenland. We never had Greenland. We had during World War II, it was important in the war, and we still have a base there. That's part of it. But we never had it. It was never part of the United States. It's been part of Denmark for 400 plus years. And Trump's just making it up. And I don't know who that appeals to, but look, I want to touch on something that deals with comedy. You mentioned comedy because this is serious intersex comedy. Trump's FCC chair, Brendan Carr, the guy who pressured ABC to fire Jimmy Kimmel, and thankfully Jimmy Kimmel got rehired, is now cracking down again on Kimmel, on Colbert, on The View, all the late night comedy shows, saying they must have Republican candidates on if they have Democratic candidates or Democratic office holders on because equal time. In equal time, if people go like, why doesn't it apply to Fox News? Just from a legal point of view, it only applies to broadcast networks. It doesn't apply to cable, or there would be equal time arguments every single day for Fox News and Newsmax. So just so we can try to expand that law in the future. But in any event, there's two parts. There's a part, Andy, where like they're trying to program these shows. But second, some of these Republicans, I would love to see them on Colbert. I would love to see Stephen Colbert interview or Jimmy Kimmel go after Jim Jordan or some of these buffoons and see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, from a comedy point of view, I think they would be much better guests. I mean, he may be actually doing comedy a favor, which would be nice. He's ruined comedy in almost every other respect because it's very difficult to out stupid Donald Trump. So he's made our jobs much harder. But yeah, I mean, bring them on. I would love to see these guys. I mean, just in the limited, I was again listening to the Jack Smith stuff today. These guys are such buffoons. I mean, they'd be great foils. I mean, actually, back in the old days when Colbert had the Colbert Report, he would interview congressmen all the time and with hilarious results, kind of in an Ali G way, where he would have them on and they really didn't know where he was coming from. So I would love that. But I think there's something else that's really funny going on. Well, first of all, there's something not funny going on, which is state censorship. And
Right.
obviously
Mhm.
that's of concern. And, Brendan Carr is just such a tool. I mean, he's this guy who was on the record saying that, political satire is such an important and vibrant part of the fabric of American society. And then, as we say in the UK, he did a pretty sharp U-turn there because now he's saying, no, throw them all in jail. But you know, the notion of censoring these guys and programming their shows is offensive, but it's also kind of telling about Donald Trump because Donald Trump, and I've made this observation before, but Donald Trump's media diet is so analog. He's like way back in the 1970s, maybe 1980s, but he thinks that the media landscape um, is composed of the New York Times, 60 Minutes, and like the Tonight Show. I mean, he thinks those are the most influential um, outlets out there, which is kind of weird because during the campaign, he was very good about going on podcasts and he really out podcasted Kamala Harris, which in a
Yeah.
way suggested a certain amount of savvy about how to use the media. But in terms of what he watches and what makes his very thin skin perforated. I would say it's really like the old style. It's like the evening news, the late night comedy shows, the New York Times and 60 Minutes. Like he hasn't really kept up. It's bizarre.
Do you think he looks for Johnny Carson at night? He's like, "Where's Johnny Carson? I have to turn the wireless on. We have to catch the breaking news from the front." That kind of stuff. Yeah, and Trump is now he had his board of peace thing in Gaza. The guy's actually trying to form a counter UN where he's the head of it. And I'm glad the European nations like, thank you, but no. It's the monarchs, it's the oligarchs, the countries that are a little sketchy. Russia apparently is going to join, and they said today they would give the $1 billion fee if Trump would unfreeze the assets in America that from the Ukraine war that we froze it. So what a smart thing by Putin playing Trump. Go, I'll give you the billion, just release the money, all my money, and I'll give you $1 billion from there. But he is trying to recreate the world order, the post-World War II world order, where he's really the head of it. Like he thinks it's going to have this little club, like it's going to be like, instead of the superheroes that are good, like the League of Justice, it's like the League of Injustice, the League of Bad People, all together in a club. What do you make of that? I mean, where's that going?
Well, I mean, look, I was just thinking about this today, and like the Board of Peace is got to be like the most misleading act of branding since Truth Social. It's literally the opposite of what it says it is.
Right.
When you're inviting people like Vladimir Putin, who, of course, invaded Ukraine, I mean, I really think like the application for the Board of Peace is very brief. It's like three questions. It's like, what are your bank details for transferring $1 billion to Donald Trump?
Mhm.
That's like the first one. The second one is, what would you say to the Nobel Committee to persuade them to give Donald Trump the Peace Prize in 2026? And then the third one would be, how many wars have you personally started? Because if you have not started at least 4 wars, you cannot be on the Board of Peace. That is like
That
the entrance requirement. And speaking of peace, Dean, and I know that
mhm.
we don't call it tweeting at Substack. I guess we call it noting. Um,
Sure.
but no one talking about things that no one in the mainstream media is talking about. The the so-called ceasefire in the Middle East. That's sort of like a
Yeah.
ceasefire in the way the Board of Peace is the Board of Peace or Truth Social is Truth Social. It's not a ceasefire. Hundreds of
It,
people are being killed,
yep.
including
Today
journalists. And
and
you
children.
know, now that we're over the Greenland adventure, I would love us to get back to Epstein first and foremost. But
Mhm.
I'd also like some honest coverage of this whole ceasefire because so much of, it's very uncritically referred to in the media as the ceasefire. Trump's Gaza triumph is still very much being talked about as like a huge diplomatic masterstroke. I mean, I just don't see like if you are a fireman and there's a building on fire and you just put out half the fire, you don't like go home. You don't say
It's
mission accomplished. And I mean, we just don't have peace in Gaza, right? I mean,
no,
am
and well, there are
am I
people still getting
crazy to
killed.
bring this up? Am I being a
No,
stickler?
I post about it all the time, and it doesn't get the coverage that it deserves. Instead, I've been focusing on some filmmakers about Palestinian films. I had Shireen Dambas on, my friend, earlier this week about her film. She didn't get an Oscar nomination today, but another director I did, the voice of Hind Rajab, got nominated today for Best Foreign Film, and that's about the Gaza war and a real true story of this young 6-year-old girl, Hind Rajab, and the efforts by the Palestinian paramedics to save her. And it's a heartbreaking movie, but it's so well done. She's very influenced, you can tell, by Paul Greengrass, who did United 93, very fast paced, it's very riveting. The
Oh,
subject matter
great.
is so painful, but it's riveting, and you're on a ride for an hour and a half. It's sadly, you know where it's going to go because it's based on a true story. But yeah, look, 3 journalists were killed yesterday. More than 100 children have been killed by the Israeli military since the ceasefire was announced. It's a lot of children to die,
Right.
in that. And the big picture, thousands have been killed, tens of thousands, or probably about 20,000 children. So the number have gone down, but it's still. And Jared Kushner has his. I look at the plan that he has for Gaza rebuilding, and I can't tell the details. If there's any good faith, if 20% are for Palestinians, if 80% for Palestinians, I have no idea right now. So we're going to see how that plays out. But certainly, my family's in the West Bank and they're dealing with settlers who are trying to take their land right now. Like they've been
I
there for
didn't know that.
generations. Yeah, they're literally trying to drive them and others who are Palestinians. My family's from outside of Bethlehem called Batir. It's a small little sleepy little village, but it's on the close to the Green Line, which is the barrier that's actually the border of Israel and the West Bank. So now the settlers are emboldened under Netanyahu in the last 2 years. So they're coming for their land, and the farmers, they can't even go and harvest their own olive trees that have been in their family for generations. And that gets little to no press. I mean, it gets teeny bits of press. It's an injustice in real time playing out. So it's heartbreaking stuff. That's, not to get into, because we're funny guys, right, Andy? I mean, everything's funny. All right, before look, this was a very fast 30-minute conversation. I really
We had a
enjoyed
lot to
chatting
cover.
with you. We did cover a lot, including we brought peace to the Middle East, and we're gonna have a new piece, the board of pizza. Not peace. I'm half Italian. The board of pizza and peace. So, Andy, before I let you go, where's the best place do you want people? Is it Borowitz Report on Substack? Anything else you'd like
Yeah,
to share?
BorowitzReport.com. It's been my URL, and I've got to say this, Dean, because it's a little self-promotion. It's been my URL for 25 years. We're
Wow, congratulations.
celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Borowitz Report. I started
Congratulations.
doing this just as a hobby to like entertain my friends, and I never would have guessed that it would turn out to be like my job, but
Mhm.
it is, and I'm having more fun at Substack than at any time in those previous 25 years because now I can do fun stuff like this, like podcasts, and I can actually do serious fact-based pieces and
Mhm.
interviews and all kinds of stuff. So yeah,
That's great.
BorowitzReport.com. We're now just gonna plow ahead to the next 25 years, see what we can do.
And to eternity and beyond. It's great stuff.
Exactly.
Another movie reference. Andy, thank you, my friend, for joining. It's always great to chat with you monthly. And I read your stuff every time. I really enjoy the Board's Report. I literally recommend it on Substack, but I recommend it people all the time. It's funny and you make great points. So have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Dean.